because those who did this compilation lack the correct interpretation. What has been passed down to them was just written down.
Okay. Gregory, what I will do now is I'm going to continue from the same reference of this Encyclopedia Britannica, the further, because that was just, you could say, a summarized definition, and now they give the let's say, more background about it. So, which you are, I think, pointing to. So I'm going to just read that out. It should be about a page. So just bear with me, and listeners also. I'm just going to read this out. So it says here, the Western prophetic religions, i.e. Zoroastrianism, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, developed the concepts of the Last Judgment that are rich in imagery. Zoroastrianism, founded by the Iranian prophet Zoroaster, teaches that after death, the soul waits for 3 nights by the grave, and on the 4th day goes to the bridge of the requiter, where the person's deeds are weighed. If the good outweigh the bad, even if only slightly, the soul is able to cross the bridge to heaven. If the bad deeds outweigh the good, the bridge becomes too narrow for the soul to cross, and it plunges into the cold and dark abyss of hell. This is not the end, however, for there will be a final overthrow of Ahriman, the prince of demons, by the Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord, who will resurrect all human beings, preside over a last judgment, and restore the world to goodness. So, Greg, that is in the Zoroastrian belief, the process of the last judgment there. Just to let you know, Gregory, there's more to come in the other teachings that are there. So this is the teaching from Zoroastrianism. Does that portray a better picture, Gregory, as you were referring to, about the framework that you were referring to?
The picture you just painted from the writings, or from the purported writings or the summary, are only cramped and not dynamic. It doesn't give the framework which will present a more precise and dynamic picture of what it is all about. Why at all do we have a last judgment?
Right. Now, what I'll do, Gregory, I will just continue because it's only a little bit more. I would like to just refer to the other teachings. So I'm going to read that. It says, early Hebrew writers emphasize a day of the Lord. This day will be a day of judgment of Israel and all nations, as it will inaugurate a kingdom of the Lord. Christianity teaches that all will stand to be judged by God at the second coming of Jesus Christ. In early Christian art, the scene is one of Christ as judge, the resurrection of the dead, weighing the souls, the separation of the saved and the damned, the representations of heaven and hell. I'm going to stop there, Gregory. There's one more thing coming up after this. So I just want to ask, what I've just read out there, referring to Judaism and Christianity, that's how can I say, adding more to what we read earlier, if I say, is that giving more background, or let's say, is that more accurate now, or adding? Does it help us further? Let me say it like that.
This is more of an accumulation of writings which sort of describe or make allusion to this particular final judgment, and has given the possible instances, what is likely to be around, as is mentioned in the Christian writing, the coming of Christ, the second coming, so-called. So these are just writings which seem connected, but one really cannot make sense out of it and say precisely, based on these, on the laws of creation, these are the things which are expected. That's where we find that it is very difficult to read these things and understand them.
Gregory, I hear you, and what I'm seeing is that the way these pictures or the way these descriptions are given, it is a picture they're building. They may not be, you could say, precise in or in the actual process, but they build a picture. And if I just continue, I will see. I think you will see what the point I'm trying to make here. So this is continuing about what Christianity says about the Last Judgment, and here this is from the, let's say, paintings of this particular era, Romanesque era. So I'm just going to read that on. It says, later the Romanesque artists produce a more terrible vision of the Last Judgment. Christ is shown as a stern judge, sometimes carrying a sword and surrounded by 4 mystical beasts, eagle, lion, ox, and a winged man of the apocalypse. The contrast between paradise and hell is between the awesome and the ferocious. In the gentler, more humanistic art of the Gothic period, a beautiful Christ is shown as the Redeemer, his right side undraped to reveal the wound of the lance, both wounded hands raised high in a gesture that emphasizes his sacrifice. He is surrounded by the instruments of his passion, cross, nails, lance, and crown of thorns. The intercessors are restored, and the scene of the last judgment is treated with optimism. In the 16th century, Michelangelo produced a radically different version of the Last Judgment, and in his fresco in Sistine Chapel in the Vatican, a vengeful Christ gestures menacingly towards the damned. So, Gregory, that's I just wanted to read that out. I wasn't sure if I should read it all out, but just to go further from what you were saying, that's how pictorially, Gregory, the Christian artists have painted the Last Judgment. Again, do you think those pictures or portrayals are, well, I don't know if I should call it accurate, or are they make it understandable? Let me say, I myself, I'm not clear actually, if I'm honest. So are they helpful? Let me put it that way, those portrayals.
They are helpful, and at the same time, they are not helpful.
Oh,
they are not helpful because you have a cacophony of, in quotes, different pictures, which are not sometimes related. A very simple example that you gave of one of the pictures, a vengeful Christ. Christ has never been vengeful. From his words, from his activities, he never mentioned revenge or is being vengeful. So you now have an interpretation which runs counter to the personality of Christ himself. That's why one had to dismiss them and say that cannot be correct.
Right. Gregory, what I'm seeing is there's, let's say, I'm going to put it in this way, there's some things which are, let's say, fact, and some things which are exaggerated or misunderstood, maybe not exaggerated, but maybe confusing. Let me say it like that. So the pictures, as you said, they're mixing up things, and now you don't know which one is correct. So before you, I want to continue with one more thing, Gregory, and this is about Islam, the Last Judgment as given in Islam. So here it says, Islam likewise is rich in its imagery and conceptual expansion of the doctrine of the Last Judgment. The Day of Judgment is one of the 5 cardinal beliefs of Muslims. After their death, persons are questioned about their faith by 2 angels. Munkar and Nakir. The soul of the martyred person immediately goes to paradise, while others go through a type of purgatory. At doomsday, all people will die and then be resurrected to be judged according to the records kept in two books, a person's good deeds recorded in one book and evil deeds in the other. The weight of the book tied around a person's neck will determine the consignment to paradise or to hell. Gregory, would you like to say something on that?
Again, you will find that be it in Judaism or Christianity or Islam, there is a thread of connection between these three teachings, and it's more like an elucidation of this so-called last judgment, which last judgment has not been well understood. So you have pictures sometimes which have been juxtaposed in one place or another, and for you to make sense of it becomes very difficult. That was why one says they are correct, and yet they are not correct. They are correct because there are some glimpses of pictures which are correct. However, the way they have been arranged turns out to be contradictory. Some of the words used do not fit the personalities. What is one to make of such a picture when there seems to be so much contradiction and one cannot follow?
Thank you again, Gregory, for your answer. And I want to continue again further down the let's say description or the concept of the last judgment. And this is again from Encyclopedia Britannica, I'm reading. It says, ancient Middle Eastern religions have also developed beliefs in the last judgment. In ancient Egyptian religion, for example, a dead person's heart was judged by being placed on a balance held by the god Anubis. If the heart was light, thus indicating a person's comparative goodness, the soul was allowed to go to the blessed region, ruled by Osiris, the god of the dead. If the heart was heavy, the soul might be destroyed by a hybrid creature called Devouress. So, Gregory, that's the Egyptian, ancient Egyptian, I will call it, philosophy or belief, let me say. That's what they, again, it's like, Gregory, what I'm seeing is that every people's, if I can say that way, the beliefs, there's something common, and yet they just express it differently, maybe. So what would you say about this one, about the Egyptian belief?
Well, again, you find that thread, there's a similar thread between the people of Egypt, the Christian, the Jews, and Islam. It's the same thread which has been interpreted in different formats to suit the audience. Unless one is able to extract an intuitive picture out of it. So it becomes very difficult if one takes these things at face value.
Thank you for that. And I will now finish with this last statement. It's in the Asian religions, for example, Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism that believe in reincarnation, the concept of the last judgment is not uncommon. I think what they mean is just, it's not really there. So I'll just repeat that, Gregory. In the Asian religions, which is Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism, that believe in reincarnation, the concept of the last judgment is not common. I'll say it like that. So I don't know if it's they don't know about it, or it's just they don't believe in it even, because of reincarnation, Gregory. Anything you'd like to say with that?
People are granted further revelation depending on their maturity. So if you have the case where the people are not matured enough to have the conception, then you have that it's best not to mention it at all. Because even those who've had these revelations or sensing, they have turned everything upside down and it's difficult to follow. So, however, in the so-called Eastern religions, the concept of reincarnation, which is a fact, that they have held onto and subsequently have interpreted everything according to reincarnation.
Thank you, Gregory. Thanks for that. Dear listeners, I want to let you know you are listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. And if you are interested in knowing more about the Grail message or want to get a copy of the Grail message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And you're listening to Blessed Radio, which is, we are broadcasting on Blessed Radio 1, the number 1.com. Also, we're broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space, live stream. That's for the live show. You can also listen to the recording of this show. Go to youtube.com again. The recording is the next day. So again, you go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space, Grail message, space, the topic of the show, which tonight is the inexorable impact of the final judgment. And of course, you can listen to our previous shows as well. And thirdly, we are broadcasting on zeno.fm/Bless Radio 1. Zeno is ZENO.fm/Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1 again. And the topic we're discussing tonight is the inexorable impact of the final judgment. You are welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us is the UK number, that is. It is 07939641958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 00447939641958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Now, Gregory, I want to now read something directly, Gregory, from the Bible. This is, again, referring to the final judgment, and it is from Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 to 46. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep on his right, but the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will answer them, Truly, I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these my brothers, you did it to me. Then he will say to those on his left, Depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. Then you will also answer, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry, or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick or in prison, and did not minister to you? Then he will answer them, saying, Truly, I say to you, as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. So, listeners, and Gregory too, I read this text just now from the Bible, from Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 to 46, referring to the final judgment. So, Gregory, we have a picture here now. What would you say about this picture? Gregory? Hello, I think you're on mute, Gregory. I think you're on mute.
Okay. Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. That picture coincides with the words of Christ when he gave the expression, love thy neighbor as thyself. That is the basis. And he also, in the last discussions we had, when we said one for all and all for one, is equivalent to what Matthew is expressing here. The principle is the same. It hasn't changed. As long as you have done it to one of the others, of my brethren, you've also done it to me. So the principle which Matthew is expressing here has always been the principle which Christ himself has exhibited in his teachings and in his activities, in all that he did. You'll find even when it's talked about the sheep are the ones who will follow and follow obediently, whereas the goats are the ones who refuse to follow, who wish to go their way and see things in a different form, and do not wish to consider anyone who is not their kin as not their neighbor. So this just gives it flesh. So what is meant by love your neighbor as yourself?
Thank you for that, Gregory. Now, we've read a lot out today. Tonight, in these different sources of, you could say, information about the last judgment of final judgment. Now, as we said, Greg, we need to decipher how to understand these, let's say, different ways of expressing about what the statements about the last judgment. And so, okay, I want to think. Gregory, there's also prophecies about this final or last judgment, about what is to happen. Something happening maybe in the skies, wars, suffering on this earth. Is there a way, because you're talking about the inexorable impact of the final judgment. So far we just talked about what is the final judgment. Maybe, Gregory, before I look at the signs of the final, let's just try to understand what exactly is the final judgment, Gregory. Let's talk about that first. What is meant to happen in this final judgment?
Well, the first impression when judging is mentioned is that of reciprocity, a framework through which things must be perceived. In the first instance, these expressions must be viewed intuitively. That means the meaning, the high meaning that they represent must be understood in an intuitive pattern. That is, they should not be tied to, in quotes, rigid local interpretations. So when the word judgment is mentioned, it's more of an accountability. Once a personality is granted skills, the question will now be, what has that personality done with that which he or she has been granted? To give an account on that which has been granted to the individual is in itself judgment. Just like many who go to school, and at the end of it, we want to know, what have you done with the opportunities granted you? Of course, it is quite easy in the case of those who learn a language and they were provided with the resources to learn the language. It's quite easy to find out if they can speak the language or they cannot speak the language. If they can't speak the language the way it is expected, then they are able to move forward to more things. If they cannot speak the language, it means they cannot move further because they still need to learn, understand the language through which creation or through which nature speaks to them. The parables which Christ gave alludes to all of this, the language. So those who are able to speak or to understand the language which Christ painted when he gave the parable of that person when he was asked, "Who's my neighbor?" And most of the teachings he gave them in parables. So whoever is capable of intuitively taking this picture in of what a neighbor is, that particular personality understands the language which is spoken to his soul, not his intellect. And that is the key. Those who, through their intuition, are open. For you are open when you understand the language. You are not open when you do not understand the language. The question is, what have you done with the opportunities granted? That is what judgment is about.
Thank you for this picture, Gregory. I mean, it's really important to get the right picture about this, this final judgment we are talking now, and to comprehend it properly. And Gregory, we always talk about the laws of nature in our discussions. Up to this point, we haven't brought that into the discussion. So I'm just wondering, is this final judgment something outside of the laws of nature? Or, we talked about earlier karma, but could you just bring the laws of nature into this picture of the final judgment, Gregory, somehow?
The laws of nature have always been there in any judgment and in the final judgment. For, like had just been alluded to, the law of reciprocal action, reciprocal activity, already gives you the picture of accountability for when one had in thoughts, in words, and deeds, in his activities or activities, sown or given cause or given rise to in nature, in creation. Subsequently, there will be the opportunity to reap what has matured for him or her in response to the initial activity. That reciprocity is what is talked about as judgment. However, when the word final, it only means there have been other judgments. And this being final is crucial, is critical, for it already gives the picture that there must be a motion, a movement from one platform to another. In that case, whatever had been sown in the past is returned in an accelerated form to the individual. Therefore, you will find in the case of the final judgment, if what had been sown in past earth lives had been of upbuilding, then the person who is involved will be in a position of openness to be able to mature and to be able to sail through, because that personality understands the language which creation speaks to him or her. Whereas the person who have been engaged in ignoble activities, that person has not made the necessary efforts to understand the language which creation or nature speaks to it. Such are what has been referred to as the goats, because in their stubbornness, they refuse to understand, to learn this language of nature, of creation, which language is necessary for further progress. Therefore, at the end times, it is a matter of the personality being able to understand the manifestations intuitively. And that is the key.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gregory, for your answer there. Now, I want to understand, Gregory, this final judgment, is it taking place on the earth? Because it's very hard to ask this question, because I'm wondering, the people who have passed on, are they going to be judged as well? I mean, let's just say, what's the process, Gregory, for the final judgment? I understand about accountability. You have done something, there will be consequences. Every action, there's a reaction. We know it from science, and we know from sowing and reaping, the law of sowing and reaping, or the law of reciprocal action. And it's always continuous. You always have doing an action, and then the reaction is coming. So, but this we are talking is the final judgment, Gregory. So I'm trying to understand, is that our, let's say, last, and we also know about reincarnation, Gregory. We have mentioned it many times here, and so we know there is a reincarnation. But with this reference to final judgment, are we going to be reincarnating again on this earth, or that is the end, and the judgment means that's no more reincarnation? And so yes, how is this process of final judgment taking place, Gregory? Is it on the earth? Is it in the beyond?
The final judgment, like has been presented, manifests itself in the returns of what the human personality had sown in the past, and also how he or she responds to the reciprocal activity that assails it, which reciprocal activity he himself has, one time or the other, initiated. Therefore, you will find that some reciprocal activities will reach the personality whilst that personality is here on earth, and other reciprocal activities will impact on the personality when he or she is no more on earth. So in the so-called beyond and also here on earth, it depends on when the accelerated speed, that which he himself had given cause to, returns to it. Therefore, it will be wrong to say, oh, it's only on earth. For some activities have been initiated whilst they were not here on earth. And when these returns come, they should be able to impact on the personality wherever that activity was initiated.
Right. So, okay. Before I continue anything further, Greg, I just want to let listeners know you're listening to Blessed Radio. This is the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. And if you are interested in knowing more about the Grail message or want to get a copy of the Grail message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And you're listening to Blessed Radio, as I mentioned, and we're broadcasting on Blessed Radio 1, the number 1.com. We're also broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space, live stream. That's for the live show. You can also listen to the recording of this show the next day, also on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space, Grail message, space, the topic of the show, which tonight is the inexorable impact of the final judgment. And of course, you can listen to our previous shows also on YouTube. Thirdly, you can listen to us on zeno.fm/Bless Radio 1, again the number 1. And Zeno is ZENO.fm/Bless Radio 1. And as I've mentioned, the topic we're discussing tonight is the inexorable impact of the final judgment. You are welcome to join us with any questions or comments by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Now, Gregory, you know, what you have been describing about the final judgment, you can see it's mobile, you know, active, you know, rather than, you could say, more still, as it has been described in the, let's say, other writings. You know, you can call them spiritual scriptures. And I guess, Gregory, every messenger has to speak to his flock in their language of understanding. You know, you can't tell, we have science now, and we can understand more things with science than those people in those civilizations, in those early civilizations, in this, you know, understanding these concepts that we are discussing tonight. And as you pointed to already, Gregory, it's very important that we get the right understanding when we are looking at these different descriptions of these final judgment. You know, it just, even different teachings, they're talking about the same process, but the way they say it, you would definitely say maybe you get similar idea, but you could also get confused ideas, which obviously cannot help us to understand things. Now, we've brought in the laws of nature that we know are always active. So, what I want to ask you now, Gregory, the laws are always active, and this is the final judgment we are saying. So it's like, if we go wrong, there's no way out for recovery. And of course, if we are, like you mentioned, Gregory, the sheep and the goat, the sheep who follow and the goat who refuse to follow. And then obviously in this final judgment, you could say the consequence of that is, well, Gregory, I want to ask you, is there heaven and hell? Because what is the final consequence of this? Because we're talking about the inexorable impact of the final judgment. So you do so many things, and is it that, Gregory, your good is exceeding the bad or evil, and so you now land into heaven? And if you, the other way, if you have, let's say your evil or good or bad deeds outweigh the good, you now land into hell. So can you tell us that, what is this impact of our actions?
The way many a person measures that which is good from that which is not so good has been arbitrary. Whereas what is meant intuitively in accordance with the laws of creation or the laws of nature are the actual meaning of these. If in accordance with the laws of creation, the laws of nature, the human personality has woven threads, which threads tend to pull him upwards, then in all naturalness, he or she will move up. If in accordance with the laws of nature, the human personality has woven threads which hold it down, then in all naturalness, he is unable to ascend. When the question then comes, is he going to hell or is he going to heaven? That is not judged by the human personalities. The laws of nature, through which the human personality came into existence at all. The laws of nature, through which opportunities have been granted to this personality to learn to understand the language of nature, the language of creation, which at the same time is the language of the Lord. If the human personality understands this language and knows how to communicate this language, then the weaving of the human personality will be such that all the activities will resonate with these laws, will resonate with other activities, and he or she will be drawn up. Whereas those who have not made sufficient effort to understand and speak this language, or to communicate this language effectively, will be lost because they lack the necessary comprehension of the activities of these laws. It is those who will be held behind. This last judgment is referred to in the world of matter. The world of matter is temporal. The world of matter, in accordance with the laws of creation, the laws of nature, are such that there is, at the initial stage, a sowing. And when the seeds have been sown, there is the nurturing, and then there is the blossoming. It comes to a ripeness and an over-ripeness. Thereafter, it undergoes a dissolution. That means a breakdown to its primeval substances. And therefore, it is important that the period granted to the personality to understand this language aright is of vital importance. For the period granted to this personality is sufficient to have built structures within itself. These structures is able to understand this language, such that when the time for dissolution comes, he or she must have matured enough for it to have departed away from the world of matter as a self-conscious human personality. It is the self-consciousness of the human personality that counts. Therefore, it can easily be deduced that only those who follow their intuition as is described by the sheep, who follow their intuition and respond to the challenges accordingly, are able to move forward, whereas the others, as represented as the goats, refuse to learn this language, and therefore they are lost. And all that they had gathered, they had built up, is not in accordance with understanding this language which nature speaks to them, this language which creation speaks to them. This same language is the language of the Lord. And therein lies the judgment. Opportunities granted for the maturity have been squandered.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for your answer and explanation. Now I'm thinking, Gregory, you've talked about that, it is our, you could say, duty as human beings to grasp and understand the laws of nature, you could say the language, as you've been saying, of creation. And there is a time limit to have, to get there. Now, so, okay, before I ask, I had a question in my mind, and the listeners asked the question, and before I go to that question from the listener, I'd like to just get clear in my head, Gregory, to relate to the again relate to the scriptures of the previous scriptures and what we are talking here with the laws of nature. Are we? The question is: are we judging ourselves, Gregory? Are the laws of nature judging us, or the Creator is judging us, or is it all three? Because the teachings we read, it's the Lord, God, is the judge. Yeah, maybe Jesus is coming, to judge as well. It might be expressed like that, let's say in Christianity, but it is let's say in the end, the Lord God who judges. That's what you would say. But then, what you have been expressing, Gregory, in your answers is the laws of creation, who, you do the action and they bring the reaction. And then at the end of the day, Gregory, who does the action? It's us. So in another way, it looks like it is in our hands what happens in the judgment. So can you please help us to understand this? Who is bringing this judgment, and how is it happening in these three? So these 3 points that I've pointed out.
Well, the point I remember is the last one, which you justly elucidated. Man does the action. The laws of nature, through which all the opportunities were granted, ensures that there is reciprocity. If the actions have been of benefit, then, of course, the reciprocity will be of benefit. If the actions have not been of benefit as such, then the reciprocity, bringing similar kinds, jolts the individual to taste that which he himself has placed in creation and make a change for the better. If, however, he or she refuses to make that change, there is no compulsion about it, because he himself must taste of that which he has placed there, not what he has not placed there. And that is the judgment which is rightly feared. Therefore, it will be wrong to consider that the Lord Almighty will bring judgment on the creatures. What really happens are the manifold opportunities. These manifold opportunities have been presented through the laws of creation. And ever before the human personality started as a spirit seed grain, these laws have always been there. So it is through the laws that each person must judge himself or herself. For before long, all that returns to it are only fruits of his activities. The opportunity is always there that the human personality, in testing of these fruits, bitter they may be, that the human spirit has the opportunity, the free will to decide never to sow any more of such bitter fruits. Then that is an improvement. Making that decision in striving to understand the language that if I put in terrible fruits, terror will come back to me. And therefore, I do not wish to go along that direction. I will do my best to ensure only fruits which are beneficial, not only to me, but also my neighbor. Those fruits, those seed grains I will engage in. Then the human personality starts learning aright the language which has been placed into creation. It was only through these laws of creation or laws of nature that the human spirit came into existence at all. It is through these laws of creation that the opportunities are also provided. Therefore, it is the human personality that has things in his or her hands. As a man has sown in creation, definitely so shall he reap the fruits which he has put there. Creation only returns what you have put there, not what you have not put there. They will have to return kind for kind. That means type for type. Homogeneity comes in. And if one's activities are so heavy as to tie that person in the world of matter to the lower regions because of their crude way of behavior, then it is they themselves who have given rise to it. They cannot accuse another for what they themselves have precipitated in creation. Therefore, man judges himself.
Thank you, Gregory, for this comprehensive picture that you have, expressed or painted. Now, I'm going to the listener, the message that the listener has sent. I'm going to slightly vary it. It's talking about the judgment again, Gregory, and what I want to ask from the listener's question is, what are the signs of the coming of the judgment? We've heard, like, maybe there's a star coming. Maybe there will be wars and suffering on the earth. How do we recognize this final judgment?
Again, the features of the final judgments are everywhere. One had talked about the acceleration of events, in which the reciprocal activity manifests much quicker than it had done in the past. Be it in goodness or in ungoodness. When these words are used, unless man is able to decipher intuitively, then he or she may find it very difficult to comprehend. For the language which is spoken, the perception which the human personality has here on earth are tied to the five senses, whereas the intuitive language is not necessarily tied to the five senses. It is more dynamic. Dynamic in such a way that a picture, not a static picture as such, a dynamic picture is painted when these words are spoken. And unless one understands that language of the intuition, then when the sky is mentioned, many look at the sky and expect horses to be coming from the sky. Whereas what is referred to is that which is non-earthly on a higher level. There, when the human spirit is capable of reflecting on it, we will now have a better answer. Fire is expected. How do you then expect, what do you then expect when you have wars which are tied to fire? With all the commotion, all the destructions, how do you then, interpret them from one nation to the other? Things which can be discussed at a dinner table is now turned upside down. It becomes a worldly conflagration. These are the questions the human personality must ask themselves. For if they do not ask themselves to ensure that they understand it aright, then the questions will keep rapping at their soul. Because to understand the laws of creation aright, one's intuition must be cleansed. It has to be cleansed such that there will be no distortion attached to the picture, which becomes opaque because of the lack of understanding. So whatever has been presented in the so-called ancient writings, the human personality must strive to arrange it in an intuitive fashion to get it right.
Thank you again, Gregory, for this answer. As you have pointed out repeatedly, that we need to use our intuition to get the right picture. And this intuition is not like the five senses which are physical. And, so we have to sense deeper. Excuse me. Now, and of course, you again repeated, you also mentioned about understanding the language of creation. However, Gregory, these scriptures, when they mention these, let's say, picture of the Last Judgment, let's say, it's not easy to comprehend, and because they do talk about these things in the sky and which, as you say, you need to understand that intuitively. Now, Gregory, there's another concept of resurrection. So now, let's say some teachings, they're talking about resurrection of the body, at the time of the Last Judgment, coming back to life somehow, and then getting judged like this. And so how can we understand that, this resurrection of the dead?
Well, again, you will find that unless man is prepared to understand the intuitive picture, then the likelihood is that one is looking at an intellectual picture. When it said the resurrection of the dead, basically the intellect already has a picture of the human personality, the body the human personality uses has come to, or has stopped functioning, and therefore it has returned to dust. So holding that picture of resurrection of the dead, which means intellectually that which had gone bust, which is no more active, which has disintegrated, comes back. Such a picture gives you a headache because you can't make sense of it. Whereas what is referred to is resurrection of all that is dead. Intuitively, it means all that has been inactive within the human soul. All that has been inactive through the period of the Last Judgment, it is quickened by the power that streams. That quickness sort of awakens those abilities or those things which have been slumbering within the soul. And when those things, those features which have been slumbering, in quotes, dead, when they are awakened, they exhibit themselves. They become manifest. So, if it's those features of goodness, many are able to behold. If it is those features of depravity, many are able to behold. And in exhibiting these features, that means many now know what these features are, which the human soul harbors. They come to judgment. That means they come to a closure. For these features exhibit themselves for what they are. It is that which is the judgment. For the period then granted to the human personality, many things which it had been, in quotes, dead, that means dormant, are exhibited. And before long comes to the closure of the cycle. So that is what is meant by resurrection of all that is dead. A more precise picture can be found in the work, In the Light of Truth, the Grail message. There it is revealed more precisely.
Thank you again, Gregory, for this answer. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. This is the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abrushin. And as Gregory just mentioned, if you want to understand more about the resurrection of the dead and the judgment, the final judgment, which is our topic tonight, you can go and get more information on the Grail message or get a copy of the Grail message for yourself so you can examine it for yourself. You can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And you're listening to Bless Radio, which is broadcasting on blessradio1.com. That's the number one, blessradio1, the number one.com. Also, we're broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box, Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space, live stream. That's for the live show. You can listen to the recording of this show the next day. Again, go to youtube.com and type in the search box. Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space, Grail message, space, the topic of the show, which is the inexorable impact of the final judgment. And of course, you can listen to our previous shows also on YouTube. Thirdly, you can listen to us on Zeno, ZENO.FM / Bless Radio 1, the number 1. And the topic, as I mentioned already, the topic we're discussing tonight is the inexorable impact of the final judgment. You are welcome to join us with any questions or comments by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Gregory, this final judgment, you talked about it is involves, the signs you've mentioned is the acceleration of activities. And now, if you look at the world today, a lot of things are happening quicker and quicker. The weather, you could say climate change. I mean, some people can say, oh, this was always happening, but surely what we can say is happening much quicker than before, because you said action and reaction, the reactions are coming quicker now. So what I'm wondering, Gregory, is it the time of the judgment approaching, or is it here? We're talking about the final judgment. Is it approaching? Is it here?
One needs to repeat the feature. One of the main features of the final judgment is the acceleration of the activities of which the law of reciprocity is manifested. And therefore, each personality must observe, because each personality needs to strive to understand the language of nature, the language of creation aright. Therefore, when it is said that one of the features of the final judgment is the acceleration of events, how do they picture this acceleration of events? Anyone who is open, is alive, and who is able to read the sign the way they are, will already draw a conclusion whether one stands in judgment or not. For of what use is it when one says, oh, we are in the final judgment? The next question will be, what is the proof? What is the evidence? Then it will be one event to another event to another event. That is not beneficial to the human personality. That which is beneficial to the human personality is what they themselves, in their intuition, have investigated in dynamic activities only then will they move from the position, the state in which they are, of just simple observation to personal conviction. So that which is beneficial to the human personality is what he or she has accomplished intuitively and personally. Else, whatever it does not get involved with, whatever he or she hasn't examined thoroughly and intuitively, is of no benefit. For it will be arguments and glossing over. Therefore, the need is there to stress. One of the key features of the final judgment is the acceleration of events, acceleration of the so-called laws of reaping and sowing. Let each personality examine that in their personal lives and in the lives of others. Then he or she will come to a conclusion. Then that will be of benefit.
Thank you. Thank you for this answer, Gregory. You're pointing to everybody has to discover these things themselves, you know. Now, looking at the world, Gregory, let's say the most of these, if you look at the activities and consequences of the activities, it seems to having a destructive effect. If you look at the majority, you know, environment, we see it clearly. We even wars and so on, behavior, human behavior. And yet, of course, there are good people, Gregory, in the world, you know, doing their good actions. And now, in the final judgment, the impact of this final judgment, is there some consequence, Gregory, which is going to be, let's say, in a group basis, or it is only individual? So is the final judgment only, let's say, because when we, let's say, cause destruction of the environment, that affects the earth, you know, the people on the earth. And then, but then, let's say, when we individually do good or, let's say, bad actions, and then we reap that, you know, that is individually, right? So my question on this is, Gregory, is there any connection with the individual actions and the group actions that will affect us individually as well in somehow, you know? And again, yeah, would that have some impact? Some which are, let's say, as a human, maybe not as a human race, but as a people of, let's say, a nation, or I'm not able to identify a group, but if I say we do our individual actions, we get the consequence of our individual action, but then we do some activity as a group, whatever that is, whatever community that happens to be, and there's a group reciprocal action on that. So my question is, Gregory, does the individual action consequence, can it, does my fate depend only on my own individual action, or is there an impact from the group activity as well, which can affect my fate?
When you mention group is made up of individuals. Individuals contribute to the overall activity. When one refers to a group, then those in that group are stakeholders. And as you know, in quotes, business, when profit comes, those profits are shared in accordance with their inputs. These inputs are individualistic. So whether one acts for himself or acts for a group, acting remains acting. For in accordance with the laws through which he himself came into existence, that which has accrued to him personally, that he himself will have to enjoy. So, group or individual, it is not the question. It is the effect of their activity. Whatever good or whatever ungood has been wrought by these activities, the returns must surely come. And they come in such a fine state that each personality will enjoy as much as they themselves have put in.
Thank you for this answer, Gregory. Now, I would like to look at the, we'll say, the prophecies concerning the final judgment, where, Gregory only pointed out, let's say, in this world, many are engaged in, let's say, dark activities, and or let's say we are suffering through the consequences of the dark activities. So, but it has been prophesied that, let's say, that in some cases it says Jesus is coming, second coming back, and others say maybe someone else, or Jesus coming and someone else, let's say, is coming, and in this judgment, final judgment. So is that the case, Gregory? Is God Almighty sending someone to help us, you could say, in this final judgment time?
When it is said that in the final judgment, Christ will be back, then unless man is prepared to understand that intuitively, the possibility is there that he'll be mixed up, very confused. That Christ had to leave the divine realm and come down to the earth does not mean that he himself has to incarnate physically, such that men will see him. But for those who take these words intuitively and have a finer picture of the activities in creation, which is the task before man, then it becomes clear that the possibility is there, but he might not have had to incarnate as he did the first time. Even the so-called old scriptures, there have been a mix-up. For, of course, one is to appear. Again, the homework is for the individual, that at the final judgment, sometimes referred to as the end times, that there will be myriads of teachings, myriads of teachings here and there, but one will stand out. It is now the task of the individual to examine in good volition, such that that which is the genuine one, he or she may recognize. As long as man does not harbor that which is genuine, or as long as man does not harbor a good volition, then there will be no basis for that which is good to approach it. As long as man does not harbor the concept of faithfulness or truthfulness, then that which is faithful or truthful may not approach it. And therefore, there is the need to harbor these high concepts and hold on to them. And in doing so, that which is of truthfulness, of genuineness, will approach them. Once they are convinced of that, that teaching or that message, which is of benefit to the human personality, will definitely approach them. And that is what is meant by seek. Seek diligently, and you shall find. Knock. Knock diligently. This calls for the abilities of the human personality or the human spirit. Only when these things are done in accordance with the laws of creation will the path be open. Then, that which the personality has seen manifesting in nature, manifesting physically in nature, before long, the meaning, which is the intuition that has caused the precipitation of this manifestation, becomes clear. Then he or she becomes knowing. And that is the task of man, to become knowing in these times. Else, he or she behaves like the goats.
Thank you so much, Gregory. We've come to the end of the show, listeners. I hope you enjoyed the discussion on the topic of the inexorable impact of the final judgment. Now, I'd like to read from the Grail message the foreword, which is titled, For Your Guidance. The bandage falls, and belief becomes conviction. Liberation and redemption lie only in conviction. I am addressing earnest seekers only. They must be able and willing to examine this matter objectively. Religious fanatics and irresponsible enthusiasts may hold aloof, for they are detrimental to the truth. As for the malevolent and prejudiced, they shall find their sentence in the very words. The message will strike only those who still carry within them a spark of truth and the yearning to be true human beings. To all such it will become the shining light and staff. It will lead them unswervingly out of all the chaos of the present-day confusion. The following word does not bring a new religion, but is intended as the torch to help all serious listeners or readers find the right path, which leads them to the longed-for height. Only he who bestirs himself can advance spiritually. The fool who uses extraneous aids for this in the form of ready-made opinions of others only walks his path as if on crutches, while ignoring his own healthy limbs. But the moment he boldly uses all the abilities which lie dormant within him, awaiting his call to help in his ascent, he is employing the talent entrusted to him in accordance with his Creator's will, and will easily overcome all obstacles that seek to divert him. Therefore awake. Genuine faith lies only in conviction, and conviction comes solely through an inflexible weighing and examining. See that you're truly alive in the wonderful creation of your God. Abdrusheen. So listeners, I just read out the foreword from the Grail message, In the Light of Truth by Abdrusheen. And if you are interested in picking up the Grail message to examine it for yourself or get some more information on the Grail message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, G-R-A-I-L, message, MESSAGE.com. Gregory, is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners to say goodbye?
Wishing everyone a beautiful week.
Thank you. And listeners, from me, same from me. And as usual, we'll be back next Tuesday with another topic. I wish you also a great week. God bless.